up there with losing a Beatle, losing a Rolling Stone. Daryl, 82 years old, what a life that man had.
Incredible. And what a legacy, and, you know, you don't even have to be... He's one of those musicians, and the Beach Boys are one of those bands, so you don't have to be a fan to have them played a role in your life, right? You know, they've sort of soundtracked so much over the decades, and I think they also sort of captured... I think one of the just kind of like the last 24 hours, just thinking about it and thinking about him and thinking about what the Beach Boys mean, they captured a sort of optimism also with this sort of rich melancholy in their music as well. Like, all of life was there, wasn't it? All of life was in their music, and that is actually quite rare, I think. It's quite rare, that.
Yeah, what do you think, Annabelle? Because it's whether or not you love them, they're part of our lives, aren't they?
They are, and just mass appeal, isn't it? You can't imagine anybody not enjoying listening to a Beach Boys album, most beautiful harmonies in there. And for me, it's actually very evocative listening to their music, because it's one of the first bands I ever heard, ever listened to. My parents used to play it in the car, and I just have these memories of being on holiday and listening particularly to Good Vibrations, and it's stuck with me ever since.
Well, Bob Dylan said he's been thinking about all the years I've been listening to Brian and admiring his genius. Elton John credited him as a revolutionary who had the biggest influence on my songwriting ever. John Lennon's son, Sean Ono, described Brian Wilson as our American Mozart. And it's true, if you think of the two great British bands from the 60s, Beatles and Stones, when you're looking for an American equivalent, you've got to go Beach Boys. So obviously they had Elvis and Michael Jackson and so on. But I think they might lay claim to being the greatest ever American band. Beach Boys, Eagles, those two. So we should listen to Good Vibrations first.
I'm picking up vibrations. She's giving me the excitations. I'm picking up vibrations. She's giving me the excitations. Good vibrations. She's giving me
the significance of that is very ambitious, it's very orchestrated, and Brian Wilson drove himself to do much more than pop, and in the end broke himself. He was psychologically very vulnerable anyway, took a lot of drugs, and the album after Pet Sounds was called Smile, and it basically destroyed him for about 10 years. But if you go back to the very start and you listen to a song called Surfin' USA, you can see what they're about. So that singer is Mike Love. Mike Love worked at a petrol station. Brian Wilson used to fill his car up. And Mike said, hey, what's going on, Brian? Every time he went through. And then one day Brian Wilson said, I'm forming a band. And Mike Love said, can I sing? And Brian Wilson said he's got an angel's voice. But he didn't do the writing, Mike Love. It was all Brian Wilson. And his brothers were on guitar and drums and so on. And we should play then the classic song that he did, again, very orchestrated, which Paul McCartney said was the greatest love song ever written, is God Only Knows.
I may not always love you, but long as there are stars above you, you never need to doubt it. I'll make you so sure about it. God only knows what I'd be without you.
Do you know what? I have a little story about that.
Go on, please. I'd love to hear it.
I got, because of 5 kids, I didn't get my own of anything. I didn't have my own record player, da-da-da-da-da. 5 kids. Finally, I got a transistor radio for one of my Christmas presents. I ran upstairs to go to bed, put it on underneath my pillow. First time ever my own transistor radio. And the first song I heard was Surfin' Safari by the Beach Boys. But my favorite Beach Boy track is In My Room.
In My Room is a very melancholy song, isn't it? And of course, Brian Wilson then went to his room for about 10 years. I've got, this is not as good as yours, but I said to my wife when we had kids, the two bands they've got to hear first are ABBA and the Beach Boys, just because they are the ultimate pop music bands. So by the time my kids were about 4 or 5 years old, they knew all the Beach Boys songs. Radio 2 then, incredibly, about 15 years ago, had the Beach Boys in a little theatre thing.
Yeah,
Brian Wilson was there. So my two girls went, aged then 5 and 7, and everyone else was 70 years old. And they were in the front row, and the Beach Boys sang all the songs to my kids, who mouthed all the words. And I'm going to show you, so they love a song called Little Deuce Coupe. Let's have a look at it. I don't even know how we sum him up.
Interesting, musically speaking, because I've studied music my whole life. I play classical piano and percussion, trained, and his genius was, and they do this at schools, you're playing a chord, you have a natural progression, there's a natural progression, and he goes to something you have no idea how he got from there to there. That was his genius. He did the unusual. The unusual. His music wasn't exactly logical.
No. And he was the only one who couldn't surf. Isn't that interesting?
And you know what else?
Yeah.
The saddest, because I'm a big, I eat books, by the way. I eat them. I don't eat them. I eat them. His autobiography was the saddest book I ever read in my life.
Me too. Made me cry because
the things his dad did to him were beyond forgiving.
Yep. His dad was a minor musician, and because he could see Brian's talent, he banned Brian.
He got jealous.
He banned Brian from playing the piano, so Brian could only learn piano by sitting and watching his dad and how he moved his fingers. He wasn't allowed to touch the piano himself.
Unbelievable.
I know.
No, the whole book made me cry.
Yeah, it did. Me too, because of the real mental illness he suffered.